welcome to a shot between the reels. It's two guys having a frank discussion about movies. My name's Dan, and this is over here.
My name is Brendan.
This is Brendan. So Brendan and I are old friends. Old friends? Old friends. Good
Old friends.
Good friends too.
Yeah.
And we both like films. And I'm guessing that you guys like films too if you're watching this. So we like to talk about films, don't we?
We do, yeah.
So we thought we'd share our discussions with the world. Isn't that generous of us? Very generous. Okay, so tonight we are talking about a film. And what is that film, Brandon? You can tell us.
We are talking about Ready Player One by Steven Spielberg.
Wow. Ready Player One, obviously adapted from a book. Ernest Cline, Ready Player One, which I've read. I read that a while ago. You have read it too, or listened to?
Yes. So I've not only have I read it, but I've also listened to it as well.
Double. There you go. Read and listened.
Yeah.
We bow to you with the superior book. I have only read it once and not listened to it at all.
Oh, just amateur hour.
I apologise. I could have listened to it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, let's just go straight in. What did we give it out of our star rating? So we're going to give all our films a star rating out of 5. Brendan, tell us what you gave Ready Player One out of 5.
My star rating out of 5 was 3.5. Good reason, as we've all discussed. And what did you give it out of 5?
Well, I was a tad more generous than you, and I gave it 4 stars. But I would like to say, the first time I saw it, I gave it the score you gave, which is 3.5. But on repeat viewing, I've decided to up my my score. So there you go.
Interesting.
Yes, and we can discuss that if you like. I'm sure it will come up. Yeah. So, brilliant. Shall we start off by talking about just our gut feeling about the films?
Yeah.
Film. What was your overall kind of impression?
So, for me personally, I think because I had read the book and I had listened to the book, I had preconceptions. I was excited for this film. I think leading up to it, I had a certain kind of maybe a preconception, thinking, how are they going to adapt this into a film? Because, as you know from reading it, I think it has vast complexities where you think, I don't really know if this can work as a film. I knew it had to change. I knew they had to make probably logical adaptations to make it fit better in a cinematic format.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, I believe they took liberties and changed things that probably for the worse, I think. And then in other cases, I think they adapted it in ways which I think were most definitely for the better and gave it more of... Undoubtedly, it has like a massively Spielberg feel.
Yeah, of course.
Which you would imagine it's going to because of it being directed by him. And I think that leads heavily to it being probably the best film it could have been.
Yeah.
In many ways. But there's still... I don't know. I have an odd relationship with it, I think, because I do enjoy it. And I think it's the kind of film if someone suggested putting it on, I don't think you'd be like, oh, this is too heavy or it's too much to watch right now. It's an easy film to watch. So that massively lends towards the credence of what it is. It's good fun. And he stays true to his nature in that, and probably true to the nature of the book. But I think it loses its darker elements. So
yeah, that's probably true. I think because you have Spielberg, he kind of channels more of like the family vibe at times, kind of like that kind of going, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's less adult, isn't it, than probably the book feels. I mean, I've got to be honest. Though this time when I watched it, I can't really remember much about the book. There's certain moments where I'm like, yeah, that bit didn't happen, and like, oh, they've switched that around. But the details have gone for me from my memory, because it was a few years back now. It was probably about 5 years ago I read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is, for me. I totally agree. I think actually it's a really enjoyable film to watch.
Yeah.
You know, I think from the get go that it does a really good opening sequence of explaining the Oasis. You know, set what's going on. Kind of, it's a little annoying that you have to have those scenes in films sometimes, but it is done well and with humour, which is great. But that opening race, I think, for me, is just absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll never forget being in the cinema, sat next to your good self, and just being totally blown away by that race and seeing, like, you know, King Kong and the T-Rex and all this, and you're just like, that. But yeah, throughout it is very watchable. And I think that's part of the reason why I probably upped my rating, because I think the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, why have they done that? Why have they changed that? Whereas this time, I didn't have those worries, those bugbears. I just enjoyed it. I think it's not a perfect film, but adapting from a book is always really hard.
Yeah.
Certainly, if people know the story, you're always going to be, you know.
Yeah, you'll never please everyone, which I totally get, and I think I agree with you. I think that opening. So when a film opens with narration, I think it's fair to say that for most people, it feels a bit like a cop out, and I think it's hard in some ways not to do that with a film like this, because the sheer size of what you're dealing with, explaining the Oasis as a thing, it's in the book. It takes so long to explain it because there's so much that's kind of happening. It's like this thing.
It would be more clunky, wouldn't it, if you had people like talking to each other and like that?
Yeah, I mean,
didn't you know about the Oasis? Like that would be really, really odd. So I think it's right. It didn't have
the whole world is living that way right now. So and they do a good job visually. They're using kind of visual storytelling to take you through that as well. So as he's narrating, it's going through the stacks where he lives, and you're kind of seeing all the people individually playing in the Oasis, doing different things, and he's explaining how you can be anyone, that you can look like anything, and you're still in your kind of rubbish place where you live, but in reality you're kind of in the Oasis, and the Oasis is amazing. So it does that huge kind of cinematic CGI flyby at the beginning of the film is good. Visually, the film is absolutely still arresting. It looks fantastic, and that opening race sequence for the first Easter egg is good. It still looks great, and it's got a lot of callbacks to other films, like you were saying, with having like King Kong, and you've got all the. I think you've got like a Tron light cycle in there that I saw.
Yeah, all the different vehicles. It is really cool.
Yeah.
And like you see some of the people in the cars at certain points and stuff like that, and you think, oh right, yeah, they're dressed. And throughout the film, you have that, don't you? Like people's avatars. I mean, that's part of the fun of watching the film, I guess, and the rewatchability. So you spot things, you go, oh yeah. I'm not. I will be honest. There was loads that I thought, oh, I'm sure that's a character, but I don't know who that is. You know, because there'll be some diehard fans out there who know probably most of those from particular 80s culture or video games or whatever. I'm spotting more of the movie ones personally.
Did you find it kind of odd that they have a lot of the 80s culture, and sometimes in some cases older than that, because it's
Yeah.
supposed to it's tying back to
Yeah.
Halliday. But then you've got
More recent
weirdly,
stuff.
there's kind of video game characters in there, like Master Chief from Halo.
Yeah. There's
Because
characters from Overwatch as well, isn't there?
yeah, which is strange. I'm like, surely Overwatch would be massive. I can't imagine it would be. Surely it would be outdated by the time you get to that point in the future.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess there's an element that, yeah, maybe money comes into that. I don't know. I don't want to be cynical, but
Yeah,
whether, oh yeah, you want to be in this amazing film that we're doing,
yeah.
who knows? Product placement and all that. Obviously, aside from the race at the start for that first Easter egg, any other sort of highlight moments? Let's just go into some highlights.
So I think, for me personally, I think we said at the time when we watched it, and I still agree now after watching it again on a repeat viewing, that I really particularly like that Shining sequence.
Yeah.
It's maybe because I have reverence for the film and I really enjoy the film, but I like also the way that they mixed it up was so smart. It's really good because they took elements from it and then they kind of switched and changed it and made it like properly horror, but also kind of video gamey, and all of it, the way it all kind of pieces together, it just feels I think we said at the time it feels massively out of place. It's a bit like, I think it's a bit like you don't necessarily expect it to be there because you've had this kind of family friendly almost affair, and then suddenly you've got that drop in the middle of it. Doesn't really know what it wants to be, but I think still for me it is a standout moment in that film.
I mean, I'm the same. I love that film. So, it's just a thrill to watch that sequence. And it looks incredible. It really does. Visually, you just think that they're on that set almost. It's just amazing. And it's fun how they kind of play with it, but how it's kind of the same but different story going on in that moment. I agree. I think that is another standout moment. It really is. It's great. I mean, I don't know if there are any other sort of standout moments. I was going to say the same one, to be honest. I think for me, I could also sort of say, and this is kind of like a highlight and a low light in the same point, really. I think pretty much all of the stuff that happens inside the Oasis is really good. And it's just great. But the downside to that, I think, actually, the stuff that happens in the real world, the stuff that like in the stacks, and later on in the film where they're kind of in this kind of rebellion, and they're all doing all this stuff, kind of on the streets. That stuff doesn't look quite as good. I don't feel like it quite connects as much. There's an element that you kind of wish that were in the Oasis film, where's the whole film. It really reminded me of The Matrix, and how like certainly with the sort of the later Matrix films, like certainly Matrix Revolutions, where they're sort of, there's a lot of scenes of them in Zion, and you're like, I'd rather see the stuff in the Matrix. That's more interesting. That's more fun.
Exactly.
And that really
I think
me.
That might be like slightly partly the problem, because I was going to say how a really good moment, again, that obviously it leads up to, and it has to be a good moment, is your final battle, essentially, where they're going for the final Easter egg. And at that point, obviously there's some amazing stuff that's kind of happening, but it's almost a bit of a CGI dump in your eyes. You kind of can't concentrate because there's so much going on. It's visually, everything's flying all over the place, and it looks incredible. And props to the special effects people that have been working on it. You can imagine it would have been such an undertaking. But then equally, I do agree. I think, and partly because I think they changed aspects of the story from the book, again, where I talked earlier about it being, there's a lot of darkness in the book, so a lot more suffering that the characters have to go through in the real world, and things they have to also get over the fact that geographically speaking, all the characters that work together in the book are very far apart from each other in the world, as you could probably imagine. Whereas, for some baffling reason, they are all really close together in the film, and it doesn't really take any time to explain it. The fact that, oh, you just live like right next door for me for some apparent reason because the plot needs us to be close together. Whereas in the book, there's a whole thing about them being brought together by Ogdemora to kind of.
What I'm right in saying one of them dies as well, don't they? They actually kill kill one of them off.
I think it's like Daito or something.
Yeah, I want to say Daito, but
dies kind of in real life. They kill him while he's inside of the Oasis. But I think, and that's what I mean.
That's another element of it being darker, isn't it? Than what
exactly. There's weight to their actions, whereas it feels almost like they have there's ultimate plot armor because they're never killed.
Yeah,
they're fine, really. Well, they don't really come close enough to danger. Yes, you have Sorento at the end of the film with a weapon and he's coming to get them, but it almost feels a bit more like a joke rather than anything. And I think that's what's it leaves it as being a bit upsetting because it doesn't feel. The only thing that really feels a threat is maybe their character in the Oasis. It's some sort of a sense. But I think beyond that, that scene again, I would agree. I think the leveling up between what you're watching in the real world versus what you're watching in the Oasis lives up to so much. And maybe that was their intention, to make the real world seem so bland and colourless. But
there has to be a bit of that, I guess. I was just thinking, actually, another scene that's good is the one where they're trying to release what's her face? What's the name of the I can't remember. I should have written it down. What's her name? Artie. When she's stuck, whatever her real name is, I can't remember. But she's in the IOI centre, and they get Sorento in his
rig,
and they kind of replicate his room. That bit's good fun. It's almost like a heist kind of vibe going on. Although that scene actually gets a little clunky. It's a clever idea, kind of using the real world in the Oasis. Okay,
but it's also that's odd. I feel like that scene is odd. Do you not feel like that scene is kind of odd because you have them looking really, really real with their real actors, and then they take off their actor faces?
Yeah, it feels like there's plot holes, doesn't it?
Look very jarring CGI.
Yeah, hey, that's a Mission Impossible face mask, isn't it?
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so shall we talk about potential scene stealers? Is there anyone in this film you think that's just like that character, that actor has just owned that moment or that scene? Anyone in particular?
I'd let you go first on this.
It's a tricky one. There's an element that with Ben Mendelsohn, you always get a good bad guy. And there are moments where he's so hammy. It's just brilliant. There's an element of me that kind of wished he wasn't quite so hammy at times, but it certainly adds to the humour. I particularly like the bit where he's offering Wade the deal, and he's got the earpiece in. He's pretending to be like he's interested in all this stuff, and he's not, and he just comes across so slimy. So that bit, I love that bit.
It's funny that you should say that, because that was definitely one of the ones I wrote down. That I love when he's playing it all, and they're feeding him the information, and he's acting all kind of cool and slots them all the references in kind of the right place, and yet he still sees through him, which is I mean, his performance definitely is hammy. I
Yeah,
particularly remember the shot of him being kicked in the nuts,
yeah.
basically,
It's brilliant
and
as
his
he walks
haptic
out, isn't it?
feedback. You could just see the waves of the haptic feedback go through
Yeah,
his whole body, which is quite. I
yeah. That
love.
bit
I
is great.
think there's a point they make about it that when he comes out of the machine, it's sort of still glowing.
The glowing, yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? That is a great moment. I love that.
Yeah,
I also, the other character I think kind of stands out is the iRock character, as that kind of, he's kind of like a bounty hunter, I guess, in some ways,
yeah,
or a mercenary for hire. Um, but yeah, there's the kind of the humour that he has. He keeps trying to banter with Sorento. It's just not going anywhere. That's great fun. Um,
Do you enjoy how they never show his face in the real world?
yeah,
Probably because they were giving an idea of what the character would be like.
yeah,
Because he's about having a bad neck and everything, and then they just never show him, and he's just he's just always this ridiculous looking character in the Oasis, and then
yeah.
that's kind of it. And then he has a ridiculous amount of loot that he kind of carries as well, doesn't he, as his character?
So, Brendan, do you have anyone else? Is there anyone else that we've not discussed?
I think what I was going to say about generally the actors that they hired for these roles, if we relate this back to the book as well, because I can't help but do it really in reality because it's my association first, as I read it first, so
Yeah,
that's the thing I
and then
have about it.
listen
But
to it.
I think they adapted it well, like very well, in a
Yeah,
sense. In a sense that I think the characters themselves come across more genuine in the film than they do in the book.
yeah,
They feel more likable. I mean, I think that was a given, but the way the characters are played by the actors, I think they all do a pretty fantastic job of making
yeah. I agree.
making you feel like you have some level of connection with them. They don't. I think in the book, to a degree, they kind of feel slightly up themselves, like they are superior because they are so good and so knowledgeable about what they do inside the Oasis.
Yeah,
They're gunters. I mean, their whole thing is they live and breathe the egg hunt. That's
yeah,
kind of what it is. And I guess for me, it felt like there's a bit more of a genuine connection um between that high five. But I mean, especially really uh, kind of with the main characters.
yeah,
Really, I think you get a sense of it from H. I love their kind of banter when they're
yeah,
in their little moments when they're together. It
yeah,
definitely feels like you
yeah.
know
That
a best.
definitely felt like, oh yeah, that felt like the book almost for sure.
Yeah.
I
So I
think the
think no. I was going to say. I think even those moments where it's a little bit cheesy. Like the romantic stuff is definitely it's got an element of that, especially when they meet up in the real world.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
also
That it's that
been,
line, isn't it, where he's like, "I'm not disappointed." It's like,
yeah,
oh, we saw that line
play
coming.
it cool, play it cool.
Yeah, that line was just, yeah, we knew it was coming. Um, I
I
did think
think
of one other performance that actually I thought was actually probably the best in the film, and that's Mark Rylance as Halliday. I
you
mean,
think so.
yeah, I think he plays him so well, like because he's just a top actor, and you just don't think of it being Mark Rylance
No,
doing that role. You know, you think of it as Halliday. I think he is
it's
that good.
really it's just. I remember the first time I saw it. I thought this is a strange choice because
He's
he's
almost
like
too good. Like,
yeah, I mean, he really is. But I think it does come across. He plays it so wonderfully nerdy. Like
yeah,
you totally are sold by the character that he kind of basically has no friends. He's completely alienated into his
yeah,
own make believe
definitely.
world that he's created. And I think
I agree.
every scene that he's in is it feels right, and I love the changing between the characters when he's Anorak versus when he's then James Halliday again.
Yeah.
So yeah,
he's Anorak's also a great character.
Yeah.
Those moments when the keys are sort of given are great. Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
I think we've talked about some of this stuff already. I mean, is there anything more about like that in the 80s nostalgia stuff that you like?
I think I was going to say, I know one of our talking points was about the score.
Yeah.
And though I didn't feel the score was entirely, it's not super memorable, I don't think, but mainly that's because it's riffing off the films that it's referencing. And I was going to how basically the perfect person to score the film. By having Alan Silvestri and getting him in and having him do it, it feels like it's the perfect fit. And I do think there's moments where it shines. I mean, you get the emotion of the film from the score, and it's definitely there. But I love how they just kind of he almost puts like tiny little jingles to the film that they're referencing in that. I did really appreciate that. I definitely think it lends it to it. There's one thing, really, I suppose, when you're watching a film like this, is you can test whether you truly are as nerdy as you might think you are. Because if you're getting almost every reference they're throwing out, maybe I shouldn't be watching a film like this. But
it's part of what makes it enjoyable, isn't it? It definitely is that kind of spotting all the little things that are there, all the Easter eggs, I guess.
What about yourself? Did you feel that it had?
I think I was just remembering about the only downside with the Shining sequence is that you lose the sequence that was in the book, which is the Blade Runner sequence, which is one of my favourites.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the reasons why I was so disappointed the first time I watched it, because I was just like, I so hope that the Blade Runner bit's in it, and it wasn't. So that was a bit of a shame. But as we've already said, the Shining sequence is really awesome.
It's definitely. It's interesting that I think for me, the part that's almost most disappointing. There are a few bits that definitely disappoint me that aren't in there, really. But I think one of the more disappointing ones is one that I think would have made sense to keep in there, which is there's a point in the book where he thinks he's on the right track for an Easter egg. He thinks he's unlocked something. So Parzival kind of heads to a remote system, finds a Pac-Man game, and he plays a perfect game of Pac-Man. And it's crazy, and it takes a long time. And I'm thinking, I have no idea how this would ever translate to a film, but they probably could find a way to make it work. But when he plays that perfect game, he doesn't unlock an egg, and he feels really disappointed. But he does get a single quarter. And the quarter obviously ends up being the same thing that is in the film, that it's an extra life, which means he then can get to the egg. But they do it in a completely different way in the film. That he gets from the curator, and the curator ends up being Octomora. But there's
and that bit is cool.
Yeah. But I think because it feels like he's really trying for something. It's disappointment, and then he actually gets something that he has no idea of the power of it. Where it feels a lot more, it feels a bit more throwaway, I guess, in the film, which was
I agree. Okay. Any other things you want to say about the film? I think we probably are ready to just discuss why we gave the score we did, but last chance to put any other comments out there.
No, that's fine. Yes, go ahead.
Cool. So, shall I go first? Why I gave it 4 stars? I think in summary, I think for me it's just so enjoyable. That the fact that I can, that was the 3rd time I watched it when we watched it last week, and I just I wasn't bored. I wasn't tired of watching it. I felt like I could watch it again, in a few weeks' time if I wanted to. And like you said, I wouldn't turn it off. Or if it was on the telly, I'd be like, oh yeah, let's put that on. I wonder what bit I'm on,
Yeah.
I think there are definitely a few plot holes in there where they're kind of going, right, we need to, move the story along a bit, which is a shame. But unless they made it into a TV series, there just wouldn't have been enough hours in the day to make it work. So I think that it's good fun. It's not a masterpiece, but not every film must be. I think it's a really solid sort of popcorn cinema film with lots of things that make you chuckle, bits that get you excited, and yeah, get although it's a bit cheesy, you get the feels as well. So that's why I gave it 4 out of 5. So, Brendan, what was yours?
So, I mean, I would say that I agree with you on many points. I think it's an easy film to watch. It's probably one that you're never going to kind of say no. If someone's suggesting putting on, you're like, it's good fun. I think from a point of view of someone that is heavily into pop culture, I can see so many draws to it. It has that. I think where it lets itself down is it doesn't really always know what it wants to be, because it has those scenes like The Shining, which I put in there, which are fantastic. It's almost lost in it. It feels a little bit too afraid to be dark, where those darker moments, I think, could elevate it to a slightly higher plane. So for me, it feels like it's taking a little bit too much of that softer approach. It's more concerned with giving you a few more laugh out loud moments, I suppose, moments where you're kind of having a bit more of a chuckle than moments where you're thinking, I'm genuinely not sure how this might turn out. You never really feel the sense of tension so much for the characters, because you're so heavily brought to believe in them and see where they're kind of going. I mean, even the destroying of the stacks is relatively muted, because you come out of it so quickly, have that moment in the world, but then it's just kind of, it doesn't carry that much further. I still think it's incredibly fun, and I really enjoyed it, and in reality, I think some of my most favorite films are still 3.5-star films. They just, they can be, but I think it doesn't have quite enough to take me to that 4-star rating. But I would say,
fair enough, mate.
I just want to end it on the point that they use basically their F-bomb essentially in the film in the best manner they possibly could. They get a random British kind of extra, I suppose. He is one of the, what are they called? The people that work for Sorento. Yeah. And he's a random guy, and so one of the other avatars, one of our heroes, has like a chucky, essentially, that's chucked to them. I think it's chucked to Parzival, and he chucks and it just hits this guy in the face, and he swears about it being Chucky, and then Chucky's repeatedly just standing
it cuts to the war room, doesn't it? And you see all these like red lights go off around that guy.
It's fantastically done. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's perfect. I think it's essentially the perfect use of them having an F-bomb, because they had to have one. But it's So I gotta give this film props. It isn't terrible. It's just, obviously, maybe I was a bit too attached to the source material and wanted to see them do.
Hey, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. We're allowed our opinions. I mean, I think, but what I would say is that I think for me there are 5-star moments in this film.
Yeah.
But it isn't able to have it consistently, because it has these plot holes and it changes from the original source material because it has to.
Yeah.
Some of those things work well, some of them don't. But yeah, certainly the moments where it's really good, it's just electric.
So definitely.
That is what I would say. I think we'd agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree, definitely.
Excellent. So that is Ready Player One. I gave it 4 stars, and Brendan gave it
3.5 stars.
3.5. There you go. I wonder what you, watching this video, thought out of the film. If you want to put that in the comments, feel free. If you want to troll us and say that we're terrible and don't know anything about what we're talking about, you can do that too. Or if you agree with us, or if you agree with me particularly, put those in. If you do agree with Brendan, have at it. No, we welcome anything at all, any comments, any love or hate. So I don't know what our next film will be. We haven't discussed it.
We'll have to have a frank discussion, as it were.
Very frank discussion.
Yeah.
Frank. So I think that's it for this week. So
yeah.
I'm hoping that we will be doing these videos roughly once a week. So if you enjoy this, click subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, which I imagine that is where you'll be watching it. So hit subscribe, and you'll be able to follow what discussions we have about the different films that we watch. Yeah. So thank you, Brendan, for your time.
Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate it.
And from us, it is goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.